8 years of building an empire from nothing, only to watch it handed to someone who never earned it. Adrian Blackwood transformed a failing tech startup into a $50 million software company, revolutionizing how businesses manage their data. But when the founder's incompetent son walked in with his computer science degree and daddy's blessing, Adrian found himself demoted overnight. What happened next would turn those 8 years of dedication into the most calculated revenge the industry had ever witnessed. Have you ever poured your soul into something, only to be betrayed by the very people you trusted most? Stay with me, because this story will show you exactly what happens when loyalty is thrown away for nepotism. My name is Adrian Blackwood. I'm 32 years old, and this is the story of how 8 years of innovation and sacrifice were erased in a single board meeting, and how I made them pay for every second of it. 8 years ago, I was a broken man standing in the lobby of Zenith Solutions, clutching a resume that felt worthless in my hands. My previous startup had crashed and burned during the market downturn, leaving me with nothing but student loans and shattered confidence. I was 24, desperate, and willing to take anything that would keep me afloat. Zenith Solutions was barely holding on, a tiny software company with outdated systems, frustrated clients, and a founder named Harrison Vale who had more vision than technical know-how. The office was cramped, the computers were ancient, and half the staff looked ready to quit. But Harrison saw something in me during that interview. Maybe the hunger in my eyes or the way I immediately started sketching solutions to their problems on his whiteboard. "You fix this mess," Harrison told me on my first day, gesturing at their failing client management system, "and you'll have a future here." I didn't just fix it, I revolutionized it. Working 18-hour days, sleeping in the office, I rebuilt their entire infrastructure from the ground up. I automated processes that used to take hours, designed user interfaces that clients actually loved, and created predictive analytics that gave businesses insights they never knew they needed. Within 6 months, client retention jumped from 40 to 95%. Within a year, we had doubled our revenue. By year 3, Fortune 500 companies were calling us directly, and Harrison was buying his first luxury car with the profits I had generated. Zenith Solutions became my life, my obsession, my masterpiece. I wasn't just an employee. I was the architect of everything they became. Harrison Vale wasn't your typical tech CEO. At 58, this former accountant had stumbled into software development through necessity, not passion. His accounting firm had needed custom software in the early 2000s, so he'd taught himself basic programming and built something that worked. When other businesses started asking for similar solutions, Zenith Solutions was born. But Harrison knew his limitations. "I can balance books and manage people," he told me during one of our late-night strategy sessions. "But you understand the technology in ways I never will. That's why I need you here, Adrian." Those words meant everything to me. After my startup failure, I'd been rejected by dozens of companies who saw me as a risk. Harrison saw potential instead of failure. He gave me complete creative freedom, defended my innovative approaches to skeptical clients, and always made sure I knew how much the company depended on my expertise. When the time comes, Harrison promised me repeatedly, usually after particularly successful product launches, "You'll get the recognition you deserve. This company exists because of what you've built." I believed him completely. Harrison had rescued me from professional oblivion and given me the platform to prove myself. Loyalty wasn't just expected, it felt natural. When competitors tried to poach me with higher salaries, I turned them down without hesitation. When clients specifically requested to work with other team members, I made sure they understood that Zenith's success came from our collaborative approach. Harrison treated me like family. He invited me to company barbecues, asked about my girlfriend Maya, and even helped me move apartments one weekend. During quarterly reviews, he'd always end with the same phrase, "Keep doing what you're doing, Adrian. This company is going places because of you." Maya often questioned why I hadn't been made a partner or given equity after 3 years of transforming the business. "You've earned it 10 times over," she'd say. But I trusted Harrison's timeline. He was building something lasting, and I was part of that vision. The official recognition would come when the company was ready for it. Trust, I learned too late, can be the most dangerous foundation to build your career on. Over the next 5 years, I transformed Zenith Solutions from a struggling local software company into a regional powerhouse. But the transformation wasn't just about revenue. It was about completely reimagining what business software could accomplish. I pioneered what we called predictive business intelligence. AI-driven analytics that could forecast market trends, identify customer behavior patterns, and optimize operational efficiency months in advance. While competitors were still building basic customer databases, we were helping companies predict which products would succeed before they even launched. The results spoke for themselves. Our client roster grew from 12 small businesses to over 300 companies, including 3 Fortune 500 corporations. Annual revenue jumped from $800,000 to $50 million. We expanded from Harrison's cramped office to a sleek downtown headquarters with 120 employees across 4 departments. But my proudest achievement was our company culture. I instituted Innovation Fridays where developers could pursue passion projects, created mentorship programs for junior staff, and established performance bonuses that rewarded creativity alongside productivity. Employee retention hit 94%, almost unheard of in the tech industry. Industry publications started noticing. TechCrunch featured our predictive analytics platform. Forbes named us one of the most innovative mid-size companies. I was invited to speak at conferences, and universities began using our software development methodologies in their computer science curricula. The personal cost was enormous. I worked 16-hour days, canceled vacations, and postponed my engagement to Maya twice because of critical product launches. She understood. We both believed we were building something extraordinary that would secure our future together. Harrison watched our success with obvious pride, often introducing me to investors as the genius behind our technology. During company meetings, he'd credit me publicly for our innovations. Adrian doesn't just solve problems, he'd tell clients. He anticipates problems that don't exist yet. By year 7, I had become the face of Zenith Solutions to everyone except the legal documents. Clients requested me personally, developers sought my approval on projects, and industry competitors analyzed my strategies. I had built an empire of innovation, and everyone knew it. Everyone except the person who would soon matter most. Ethan Vale had always existed in the background of Zenith Solutions like an uncomfortable shadow. Harrison's 6-year-old son had graduated from Stanford with a computer science degree, but he'd never shown any real interest in the family business. While I was building our empire, Ethan was backpacking through Europe, trying his hand at freelance app development, and according to office gossip, bouncing between startup jobs in Silicon Valley. When he occasionally visited the office during holidays, Ethan would hover around the development team, offering unsolicited advice about frameworks he'd read about online. He'd criticize our established processes, suggesting we modernize our approach without understanding why our current systems worked so effectively. "You guys are still using relational databases for everything?" he said during one Christmas visit, loudly enough for the entire development floor to hear. "That's so 2015. Everything should be NoSQL and microservices now." I politely explained why our architecture was specifically designed for our clients' needs, but Ethan just shrugged with that entitled confidence that comes from never having real responsibility. "Well, when I finally join the company, we'll definitely need to bring things up to current standards." The development team exchanged glances. Sarah Chen, my lead developer, rolled her eyes when Ethan wasn't looking. Nobody took him seriously because he'd never contributed anything meaningful to our success. But Harrison beamed whenever his son showed interest, no matter how superficial. "Ethan's got fresh ideas," he'd tell me privately. Different perspective from being out there in the real Silicon Valley environment. I bit my tongue. The real Silicon Valley environment where Ethan had lasted 6 months at his longest job, where he'd been laid off twice and quit once because he didn't feel valued. But Harrison was proud of his son, and I respected that. The warning signs were subtle at first. Harrison started mentioning Ethan more frequently during strategy meetings. He'd forward me articles about companies that had successfully integrated young talent into leadership positions. He even asked my opinion about creating a junior executive role that could help prepare someone for greater responsibilities. I should have seen it coming, but I was too focused on our Q4 product launch, too trusting of the man who had given me everything, too naive to recognize that blood would always run thicker than loyalty in family businesses. Ethan's return wasn't announced. It was inevitable. Ethan officially joined Zenith Solutions as Director of Strategic Innovation, a title that Harrison created specifically for him. On his first day, he walked into our Monday morning leadership meeting wearing an expensive suit and carrying the latest MacBook Pro, ready to revolutionize everything I had spent 8 years perfecting. "First priority," Ethan announced, pulling up a presentation he'd clearly prepared over the weekend. We need to pivot our entire platform to blockchain integration. Every serious tech company is exploring decentralized solutions. I stared at him in disbelief. Ethan, our clients use our software to manage payroll, inventory, and customer relations. They don't need blockchain. They need reliability and accuracy. That's exactly the problem, he replied with condescending confidence. We're thinking too small. Why help companies manage their current operations when we could help them transform their entire business model? Sarah Chen, who had been quietly taking notes, finally spoke up. The Peterson Group just renewed their 3-year contract specifically because our current system integrates perfectly with their existing infrastructure. Blockchain would require them to rebuild everything. Ethan waved dismissively. Legacy clients hold you back. We should be targeting forward-thinking companies that want to disrupt their industries. The room fell silent. Our legacy clients included some of the most successful companies in the region, and their long-term contracts were the foundation of our financial stability. But Harrison nodded thoughtfully, as if Ethan had revealed some profound insight. Over the following weeks, Ethan's suggestions became increasingly reckless. He wanted to abandon our proven development methodologies in favor of agile disruption. He proposed cutting our quality assurance testing time in half to speed up releases. He even suggested we stop offering phone support because modern users prefer chatbots. Each terrible idea was presented with the same arrogant confidence, and Harrison listened to every single one. When I privately expressed concerns about the risks, Harrison would defend his son. Ethan brings fresh energy, he'd say. Sometimes you need someone who isn't afraid to challenge established thinking. But the real problem wasn't Ethan's bad ideas. It was watching our team lose confidence in leadership. Developers started coming to me privately with concerns. Project managers questioned whether they should implement Ethan's suggestions. Our most experienced employees began updating their LinkedIn profiles. Maya noticed the change in me. You're more stressed than during the Peterson crisis, she observed one evening. What's happening at work? I couldn't explain that I was watching 8 years of careful construction being undermined by someone who had never earned a single client, never solved a critical bug, never stayed up all night ensuring a product launch went smoothly. The foundation was starting to crack. The betrayal came during what Harrison called a routine strategic planning meeting. It was a Friday afternoon in November, and I walked into the conference room expecting to discuss our Q1 product roadmap. Instead, I found Harrison, Ethan, and 3 board members I barely recognized waiting with manila folders and serious expressions. Adrian, please sit down, Harrison said, his tone unusually formal. We need to discuss some organizational changes. My stomach dropped, but I maintained my composure. After 8 years of building this company, surely this was about expanding my role, maybe finally offering the partnership we discussed informally for years. As Zenith Solutions continues to grow, Harrison began, reading from prepared notes, we need leadership that can take us to the next level. Someone with fresh vision and modern approaches to technology management. Ethan was trying to suppress a smile, fidgeting with his pen like a kid who knew he was getting a birthday present. Effective immediately, Harrison continued, Ethan will be assuming the role of Chief Technology Officer. He'll be overseeing all development operations, client technical relationships, and strategic technology initiatives. The words hit me like a physical blow. CTO, the role I had been performing without the title for 8 years, the position that should have been mine by every measure of competence, dedication, and results. Where does that leave me? I asked, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. Harrison finally looked up from his notes, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before, guilt mixed with uncomfortable determination. You'll be transitioning to Senior Systems Analyst. Still an important role, handling compliance, documentation, and supporting Ethan's initiatives. Senior Systems Analyst. A demotion disguised as a lateral move. A desk job for someone who had architected every major system they had ever deployed. One of the board members, someone I'd never met before, leaned forward. This transition reflects our commitment to bringing innovative leadership to the technology sector. Innovative leadership. I had literally pioneered 3 industry-standard practices that our competitors were still trying to copy, but apparently innovation required a family name and a degree from Stanford. Ethan finally spoke, his voice dripping with false humility. I'm looking forward to learning from your experience, Adrian. Your institutional knowledge will be invaluable as we modernize our approach. Institutional knowledge. as if I were some aging librarian instead of the person who had built everything they were now handing to someone else. I sat there for a moment, watching Harrison avoid eye contact, watching Ethan barely contain his excitement, watching board members who had never written a line of code discuss my future like I wasn't in the room. 8 years of 60-hour weeks. 8 years of sacrificed vacations and delayed personal plans. 8 years of building something extraordinary from nothing. Gone in a 15-minute meeting. I tried to make it work. For 3 weeks, I told myself this was temporary, that Harrison would see his mistake once Ethan's inexperience became obvious. I convinced myself to be professional, to support the transition, to prove my value through dedication rather than resentment. That delusion lasted exactly 18 days. The breaking point came during a client meeting with Pinnacle Industries, our largest account worth $3.2 million annually. I had managed their relationship for 6 years, personally overseeing every upgrade, every integration, every crisis that their growing business demanded. Ethan insisted on leading the meeting. Time for me to take point on major client relationships, he announced that morning, straightening his tie with nervous confidence. Within 10 minutes, he had promised them features that didn't exist, timelines that were impossible, and integrations that would require rebuilding their entire system. When Pinnacle's CTO, Janet Morrison, asked technical questions about data migration, Ethan gave answers that made it clear he didn't understand our own architecture. Actually, I interjected, trying to salvage the situation. What Ethan means is that we can implement a phased approach that maintains system stability while... Adrian, Ethan cut me off sharply. I've got this handled. We don't need to overcomplicate things with legacy thinking. Janet's expression shifted from confusion to concern. She'd worked with me personally through 3 major system upgrades, trusted my judgment on critical technical decisions, and now she was watching someone who clearly didn't understand her business make promises he couldn't keep. The meeting ended with Janet requesting time to evaluate our options. Corporate speak for, we're considering switching vendors. After they left, I followed Ethan into Harrison's office, documents in hand proving why his promises were technically impossible. But Harrison barely listened to my explanation. Ethan's approach is more aggressive than yours, Harrison said, dismissing my concerns. Sometimes you need to take calculated risks to grow. This isn't calculated risk, I replied, my frustration finally showing. This is promising things we can't deliver to clients who trust us. Janet Morrison has been with us for 6 years. She knows what good technical management looks like. Ethan leaned back in his chair with that same condescending smile. Maybe the problem is that you've gotten too comfortable with small thinking, Adrian. Real innovation requires pushing boundaries. That was it. The moment when 8 years of respect and professionalism finally cracked. Small thinking? I stood up, my voice controlled but deadly serious. I built every system you're now claiming credit for. I established every client relationship you're destroying. I created every process you're dismantling. And you call that small thinking? Harrison's face hardened. Adrian, that's enough. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough again. I walked into Harrison's office the next morning with my resignation letter and 8 years of suppressed truth ready to spill out. He was reviewing quarterly reports, probably trying to figure out why 3 major clients had requested technical consultations after meeting with Ethan. Harrison, we need to talk, I said, closing the door behind me. He looked up with that familiar expression of paternal concern he'd always used when he thought I was overreacting. Adrian, about yesterday's meeting. Stop. I placed my resignation letter on his desk, watching his face change as he realized what it was. I'm done pretending this is about business strategy or innovation. This is about you choosing your son over the person who built this company. Harrison picked up the letter with trembling hands. After 8 years of working together, he knew me well enough to recognize when I'd made a final decision. You gave me everything, I continued, my voice calm but absolute. A chance when no one else would. Freedom to innovate. Resources to build something extraordinary. I'm grateful for that, Harrison. I always will be. But you've chosen to throw away 8 years of results for someone who has never earned anything in his life. Adrian, please, Harrison started, but I wasn't finished. Ethan will destroy everything we built together, not because he's malicious, but because he doesn't understand the difference between innovation and reckless disruption. Your clients will leave, your best people will follow them, and you'll be left wondering why loyalty and competence weren't enough to matter. Ethan appeared in the doorway, probably drawn by voices. When he saw the resignation letter, his smug expression faltered slightly. "You're really quitting over a promotion you didn't get?" he asked, trying to sound dismissive but clearly shaken. I looked at him calmly, feeling a strange sense of peace settling over me. "I'm not quitting over a promotion, Ethan. I'm leaving because mediocrity dressed up as innovation will destroy everything I spent 8 years building, and I won't watch that happen." Harrison stood up, desperation creeping into his voice. "Adrian, you don't have to do this. We can work something out. Find a role that—" "There's no role for me here anymore," I interrupted. "You've made that perfectly clear." I turned toward the door, then paused for one final observation. "You know what the difference is between us, Ethan? When I started here, this company was failing. When you started here, it was succeeding. Let's see which version it becomes under your leadership." As I walked out, I heard Harrison calling my name, but I didn't turn around. 8 years of my life were ending, but for the first time in months, I felt completely free. I had no idea that freedom would become the foundation of everything that came next. 3 days after leaving Zenith Solutions, I was sitting in Maya's apartment, updating my LinkedIn profile and wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my career. Then my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Adrian Blackwood? This is Janet Morrison from Pinnacle Industries." My stomach tightened. Janet was the CTO who'd witnessed Ethan's disastrous promises firsthand. I assumed she was calling to inform me that Pinnacle was terminating their contract with Zenith, which would probably make Harrison blame me for the loss. "Janet, I know the meeting didn't go well, but I want you to know that—" "Stop," she interrupted, her voice carrying an amused tone I didn't expect. "I'm not calling about that disaster of a presentation. I'm calling because I have a proposition for you." She paused, letting the words settle. "Pinnacle Industries has been considering vertical integration for our technology needs. Instead of contracting with external software companies, we want to develop our own internal solutions. But we need someone who understands enterprise software development from the ground up." My brain started processing the implications. Pinnacle was a $200 million manufacturing company with complex operational needs across 12 facilities. Building internal software solutions for them would be like creating a tech startup with guaranteed funding and a built-in client base. "I'm offering you the position of Chief Technology Officer for Pinnacle's new Digital Solutions division. Full creative control, unlimited development budget, and equity participation in any technologies we create. You'd be building something completely new, but with the resources and stability of an established company." I sat there stunned, staring out Maya's window at the city skyline. "Janet, why me?" "Because I've watched you manage our account for 6 years," she replied matter-of-factly. "You understand business operations, you design solutions that actually work, and you don't make promises you can't keep. After that meeting with Harrison's son, I realized we need someone who prioritizes competence over politics." She continued, "Plus, I know you have relationships with the best developers, project managers, and technical specialists in the region. People who would follow you because they respect your work, not because they have to." I thought about Sarah Chen, who'd texted me twice since my resignation asking if I'd heard about any good job opportunities. About Marcus Webb, our lead systems architect, who'd mentioned feeling undervalued since Ethan's arrival. About the team I'd built and trained, now stuck working under someone who didn't understand what they'd accomplished together. "When would you need an answer?" I asked. "Take your time," Janet said. "But Adrian, after watching what happens when family connections override competence, I'm very interested in working with someone who earned their position the hard way." That evening, Maya and I sat on her balcony discussing the offer. "It's perfect," she said. "You get to build something new without the politics, with people who actually value what you bring." For the first time since leaving Zenith, I felt that familiar excitement of seeing possibilities instead of obstacles. This wasn't just a new job. It was a chance to prove that competence and innovation could thrive without nepotism and politics. I called Janet the next morning and accepted. Building Pinnacle Digital Solutions felt like returning to everything I loved about technology development, but without the political constraints that had slowly strangled my creativity at Zenith. Janet gave me complete autonomy to design our technical infrastructure, hire my team, and establish development processes that prioritized innovation over office politics. My first call was to Sarah Chen. "Adrian," she answered before I even introduced myself. "Please tell me you're calling with good news. Working under Ethan is like being managed by someone who learned programming from YouTube tutorials." How would you feel about leading development for a new division at Pinnacle Industries? I asked. Are you serious? When do I start? Within 2 weeks, I had recruited 8 of Zenith's best people, including Marcus Webb, our former lead architect, and Jennifer Park, who had single-handedly managed our most complex client integrations. They didn't just join for better salaries. They joined because they wanted to work somewhere that valued expertise over family connections. This feels like the early days at Zenith, Sarah observed during our first team meeting in Pinnacle's spacious new development wing, except now we don't have to worry about someone's unqualified relative undermining our work. Our first project was developing an integrated operations management system for Pinnacle's 12 manufacturing facilities. Instead of buying expensive third-party solutions, we built custom software that perfectly matched their unique operational needs. The system included real-time production monitoring, predictive maintenance scheduling, and automated quality control reporting. But I didn't stop there. With Janet's backing, I designed the platform to be scalable and marketable to other manufacturing companies. We weren't just solving Pinnacle's problems, we were creating intellectual property that could generate revenue from external clients. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Our operations management system increased Pinnacle's production efficiency by 23% within 6 months. Equipment downtime dropped by 40%. Quality control errors became virtually non-existent. More importantly, other manufacturing companies started noticing. When industry publications wrote about Pinnacle's operational improvements, they credited our innovative software solutions. Within 8 months, we had external companies requesting consultations about implementing similar systems. Janet approached me with a proposal that made my head spin. Adrian, what if we spun off Pinnacle Digital Solutions as its own company? Pinnacle would maintain majority ownership, you'd have significant equity, and we'd market our solutions to the broader manufacturing sector. I stared at her, processing the implications. You're talking about creating a direct competitor to companies like Zenith Solutions. She smiled. I'm talking about creating a company that prioritizes competence over nepotism. Interested? Maya found me that evening staring at financial projections and market analysis reports scattered across our kitchen table. You're going to do it, aren't you? She asked, wrapping her arms around me from behind. I think I have to, I replied. This is bigger than revenge or proving a point. This is about building something that actually matters. She kissed the top of my head. Then let's build something extraordinary. While Pinnacle Digital Solutions thrived, news about Zenith Solutions began filtering back through industry contacts, and every update was worse than the last. The collapse wasn't dramatic. It was a slow-motion disaster that perfectly illustrated the difference between competence and connections. The first major crack came when Pinnacle Industries officially terminated their contract with Zenith. Janet's decision sent ripples through the business community, because Pinnacle had been one of Zenith's most stable, high-value clients. When other companies asked why they'd switched, Janet's response was diplomatically devastating. We needed a technology partner who understood our operational requirements and could deliver realistic solutions on schedule. 3 weeks later, Henderson Manufacturing followed suit, citing concerns about project management and technical reliability. Then Morrison Logistics, then Apex Financial Services. Each departure was accompanied by carefully worded statements that basically said the same thing. Zenith no longer delivered the quality of service they required. Sarah, who still had friends working at Zenith, kept me updated on the internal chaos. Ethan's trying to implement blockchain solutions for everyone, she reported during one of our team lunches. He convinced an accounting firm they needed cryptocurrency integration for their payroll system. They canceled the contract after the first demo. The developer exodus accelerated as Ethan's management style became increasingly erratic. He'd publicly criticized employees in meetings, overruled technical decisions without understanding the implications, and started requiring approval for routine maintenance tasks that used to be handled automatically. Marcus told me that Ethan actually asked him to explain what an API was during a client meeting. Jennifer shared, shaking her head in disbelief. In front of the client, Marcus is updating his resume. The final blow came 6 months after I'd left. Harrison called me personally, his voice carrying an exhaustion I'd never heard before. Adrian, I need to ask you something, he began hesitantly. Would you consider coming back? We could work out a partnership arrangement, give you the authority to restructure how things work. Ethan is. He's learning, but maybe he needs more experienced guidance. I sat quietly for a moment, processing the desperation in his voice. This was the man who had given me my chance, who had trusted me to build something extraordinary, who had then thrown it all away for family loyalty. "Harrison," I said gently, "you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. You chose to prioritize your son's future over your company's competence. That was your right as a father and an owner. But now you're asking me to fix the consequences of that choice. The company is failing, Adrian. We're losing clients, losing people, losing everything we built together." "No," I corrected. "You're losing everything I built. Everything we built is thriving at Pinnacle Digital Solutions, with the people who actually understand the work." Harrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm going to have to sell the company." I felt no satisfaction in those words, just sadness for what could have been, and certainty about what came next. 18 months after walking out of Zenith Solutions, I stood in the conference room of Pinnacle Digital Solutions, watching our team present a proposal to the board of directors that would change everything. We weren't just asking for approval to expand our operations. We were proposing to acquire the remaining assets of Zenith Solutions. "The opportunity is straightforward," I explained to the board, projecting financial charts that told the complete story. "Zenith's client base, intellectual property, and office infrastructure are available at a fraction of their previous value. We can integrate their remaining resources with our proven management approach and convert their failed projects into successful ones." Janet, now serving as CEO of our newly independent company, added the strategic context. This acquisition would immediately establish Pinnacle Digital Solutions as the dominant enterprise software provider in the region. "We're not just buying assets. We're consolidating a market we've already proven we can serve better." The board approved the acquisition unanimously. 2 weeks later, I walked back into the Zenith Solutions office for the first time since my resignation. The bustling energy I remembered was gone. Half the workstations sat empty. The remaining employees looked demoralized, and the innovative development lab I'd designed had been converted into storage space for obsolete equipment. Harrison met me in the lobby, looking older and more defeated than I'd ever seen him. We shook hands professionally, but the warmth that had defined our relationship for 8 years was gone, replaced by mutual understanding that this was purely business. "Take care of the people who are left," he said quietly as we signed the final acquisition papers. "They deserve better than what I put them through." "I intend to," I replied. "The good ones will have opportunities with us. The work ethic and technical standards will be exactly what they remember from the early days." Harrison nodded, then asked the question I'd been expecting. "What about Ethan?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Ethan isn't a bad person, Harrison. He just wasn't ready for the responsibility you gave him. Maybe someday he'll develop the competence to match his confidence, but that development needs to happen somewhere else." Ethan was notably absent from the acquisition proceedings. According to office rumors, he'd already moved to Austin, claiming he wanted to join a more innovative startup environment. Some people never learn the difference between innovation and competence. That evening, Maya and I celebrated quietly at home, reviewing the financial projections for our expanded company. Pinnacle Digital Solutions now employed 47 people, managed contracts worth over $30 million annually, and held intellectual property that positioned us as industry leaders in manufacturing software solutions. "Do you feel vindicated?" Maya asked, curling up next to me on the couch. I considered the question seriously. "No," I said finally. "I feel grateful. Harrison's betrayal forced me to discover what I was really capable of building when competence and integrity were the only requirements for leadership." I raised my glass of wine slightly, not in triumph, but in recognition. Sometimes the best foundation you can build is the one you stand on when you decide to start over. This time, we built it right. Through the window, I could see the lights of our new office building, where tomorrow our team would continue building solutions that actually worked, for clients who valued expertise over politics. The empire I'd lost had been replaced by something better, a company built on competence, sustained by integrity, and owned by the people who created its value. That's a